حضورنا الكريم، سننتقل على الفور إلى الجلسة التالية في مساء هذا اليوم، وهي جلسة تحمل عنوان إدارة برامج ومحافظ المشاريع. ستقدمها الإعلامية رامية فراج من فوربس الشرق الأوسط، فلنرحب بها والتي ستعرفنا على المتحدثين في هذه الجلسة. بمعيتكم فلنرحب بها.
Assalamu alaikum, marhaba, and hello, good afternoon. So pleased to be here today, so pleased that you are all joining us for this panel on project management, program management, and portfolio management, and how they're all different. Although there are some common aspects, portfolio and program management require a special set of skills and capabilities and practices. Those have considerably evolved in the past decade compared to projects management, which is much more established. Here to enlighten us on the recent changes, the best practices, the required skill sets, and success factors for program and portfolio management is Dr. Ricardo Vargas, Global Leader in Project Management and Business Agility at Macro Solutions. We're also joined by Juan Carlos Sahdala, Chief Planning and Project Officer at DP World, and Frank Ryle, Senior Trainer, Consultant, and author at the International Institute for Learning in New Jersey. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for this very interesting discussion with so many different points of view. Dr. Vargas, I would love to start by asking you, what are the best program management practices that you have adopted for the companies that you have consulted for?
Yeah, hi, Ramya. Hello, everyone. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be with all of you today. And I think before I start talking about the ways of working and how we can leverage program management, we need just to understand why programs do exist. When you have a project, you are aiming to deliver some type of benefit. And when you put together different projects in a program, what do you think is that the synergy among these projects will deliver a better benefit or a higher benefit than if you do them isolated? And this drives me to the first point. It's all about benefit management. So when we think about a tool and a technique that we use to measure benefits, and I truly believe that you cannot define and assess a benefit if you're not able to measure it. And this is why, for example, I use the concept of OKRs, objective and key results. And this concept was developed by Andy Grove from Intel long time, and John Doerr wrote an excellent book about it called Measure What Matters. And the OKRs, it's a set of very clear, sharp, measurable objectives. And the key results, they are coming from the projects that compose that program. So this is the way that you can track the program benefit towards every single project. And the second point is all about complexity. And this is a super important point, because when you put things in a programmatic approach, you naturally increase the complexity of your project, or of your program. And this is why I use a concept that is a very interesting, it was developed at MIT, called design structure matrix. And this is exactly to address complex systems and what we call coupled relations. For example, when in a program you have a project that relies on an information from another project, and this project relies back to the other project. So you have what I would say a loop. And this creates an increasing level of complexity. So I think these two tools and these two ways of working, OKRs and DSM, are, I would say, excellent for program management.
So objective and key results, and we can learn more about that through Measure What Matters, a book recommended by Dr. Vargas. Mr. Sahdallah, please brief us on the best practices in program portfolio management that you're applying at DP World.
Thank you very much, Ramya, and thanks for the organizers of this event for this opportunity. I think it's a good chance to share maybe applied project management. There's a lot of science behind this field. However, our strategy and what we do is mainly driven by business needs. And I think we had earlier today our chairman here explaining more or less what our vision is, and I'll touch base on this briefly later. I will say the most important part of our strategy in portfolio management is effectively people skills. We have a variety of technologies and techniques which are available to most people in the market. But unless we identify and we engage the people that have the right expertise, I think all of this becomes of little use. You cannot really make advantage of this. So we spend a lot of time in identifying these individuals, making sure that they have related expertise to the project they're engaged in. So the idea is not just to manage activities, is to add value and to be able to understand what the real problems are. Now, as our portfolio, as our programs became bigger and bigger through the company transformation, we had to assist ourselves with these digital solutions. It didn't make any sense to continue to hire people and to grow this team more and more. It came a point when it just started bringing more communication gaps into our team. So we started looking at the market, we identified various digital solutions that are going to allow us to effectively do the other part of our practice, which is data management. So through these tools, we're able to collect, we're able to assess this data, and we have basically assisted our managers, our portfolio managers, with tools to process and to use this data to manage our projects. Finally, and to be, I think, more and more aligned with our company, there's a huge drive of sustainability. So the idea is to make logistics in a resilient manner. This is what our company is pushing for. So we're not here for the quick gain. We're trying to do these projects in a way that we coexist with our ecosystems, with our environments, with our communities, and make a sustainable project. So this is an important element of our portfolio management strategy. And finally, I think the last component is certainly technology. It's innovation. It's integrating solutions which are available in the market. I think people tend to be afraid to enter into this. We hear about them. It's very difficult to effectively go through it, make them part of your program management. But we have been successful, and we continue to drive our strategy supported by innovation and technology.
So DP World employed digital solutions instead of employing more people. And I wonder if this was a trend. Mr. Ryle, maybe you could enlighten us about what real-life portfolio management practices were trending in the past year. Is this among those?
Well, there are certainly many trends going on. Ramya, thank you very much. Great to be on the panel with these two fine, handsome young men. My wife took over hairdressing duties during COVID, so most of this is grey if you do get to see it.
He looks great.
And thank you to everybody who's attended the conference, particularly the master speakers and those people who were at the talks during the last 2 days. So one of the trends I'm seeing is because of complexity coming in the world, is massive complexity, is a drive in the opposite direction towards simplicity, particularly simplicity of the process. So we've had the PMI, APM, IPMA. PMBOK, and we've had Agile as well. And what I would ask you to think about is perhaps using an airport metaphor to describe everything that we're doing. So if you imagine the airport here at Dubai and you have planes coming in, let's say Emirates. So you would have one plane as a project, and Jean Carlos has, I think, 70 projects in his portfolio. So you have this idea of the plane coming in, and that's one project. And then Emirates would be one program, perhaps United Airways or American would be a different program. And then this air traffic controller is the portfolio. How many of you have a project that doesn't even have a pilot or doesn't have enough fuel to get to where it's going or actually doesn't even know where it's going? And so we have this connection between these things that need to go somewhere, have a pilot, have stakeholders, have requirements, and then the benefit management of it as a group and staggering them and managing them. And then this air traffic controller role, who is different from the pilot, is different from the manager of this. So this complexity needs to be simplified. So one of the things we're seeing is a drive away from computers, actually, funny enough, towards physically building models and creating these artifacts, this haptic, where you can pick it, you can touch it, you can move it, you can give it priority. So for example, you could use chess pieces to represent importance. You could say a king and a queen beats a pawn. Somebody say, why is mine a pawn? How dare you say my project is a pawn, you know? And you can have this discussion, this argument, which we might call storming. So having these moments before you put it into technology, before you capture it and communicate it in whatever it is I think a trend that I'm seeing. It's actually kind of an odd one to say here, but Apple has this thing insanely simple. We call it disarmingly simple, but there should be never a communication gap because of vocabulary. And just a very quick point, the Minister for Mars and they went to the Mars mission and others, they mentioned the word accountable and responsible. And just that simple terms, I would ask you to do this. These guys, they speak Portuguese and Spanish. Translate the word in Portuguese and Spanish, accountable and responsible. Now, for the rest of you who speak Arabic, you can do this as well. And Al Zaitoun, a great friend who sadly is not here this time, and Ramia, you can do this, to translate the word responsible and accountable into Arabic. And what they tell me is, it does not exist. It's the same word in Spanish, in Portuguese, in French, in Italian, in Mandarin, in Arabic. You can tell me if that's true. So when we use the word racy in project management, it induces a level of conflict and complexity because those words literally don't mean anything else in other languages. So perhaps using the word ownership. So those of you who know RACI, just very quickly, RACI prior to that used PARIS as a coding, performs, approves, reviews, informs, supports. Prior to that it used Cairo. So these are the coding. So in the session on the weekend, on Monday, Tuesday, we used Dubai as a coding. And what was interesting was some of the students came up with the B in Dubai standing for blame. Who are we going to blame? And saying, we don't want to blame you. So it was a lovely moment to say, the point of having these conversations is to identify who we don't want to blame in the future and how do we make sure they're successful. So a lot of this is removing the complexity from the process. And I do think one of the trends will be to see AI becoming part of that in the next year. Certainly next year, I'm sure there will be people up here speaking about AI within the process, taking over. So yes, simplification, I think, is probably the biggest one. Creative is another thing we want to come back to, but simplification first, and then maintaining space for creativity and innovation.
Interesting that you're speaking about simplification because so many companies now are using metaverse to experience their digital twin. So you have two sides of the story there, and I will ask you a bit more about that shortly.
A boating metaphor would be better for DP World. We'll have a shipping.
Metaverse is the top of our agenda. There's no doubt of that.
Ricardo, I'd like to ask you about agility and agile transformations. This is now a buzzword. How do you see agility in the portfolio management practices that have really been used traditionally?
Yeah, I think I need also to start explaining that agility is one thing. Agile method is another thing. Mm-hmm. When we talk about agility, we tend to say, okay, in order to have agility, the only possible path is through an agile method. And this is not true. You can use any method and be agile, and you can use an agile method and not be agile, and not have an agility. Agility is your ability to decide fast, to adapt fast, and to evolve. And when I see this applied to portfolio management, what do I see is that there is no such a way anymore that you select the projects that you want to insert in your portfolio, and in January and say, okay, they will stay like that for 1 year. You know, things happen every single day. So you need to be able to adapt. So what is the trend now? It's that you have an evolving evaluation of your current portfolio. So you insert projects, you remove projects in a dynamic way, and not just once a year, for example, or twice a year. And in order to do that, you need to have technology to support on this decision-making process. So this is why, for example, there is a lot of tools using artificial intelligence, big data, data information that will help you to decide in a dynamic way. And my third point is about a flat structure. So when you have a very strong hierarchical structure to take decisions, you automatically reduce your ability to decide fast. So most of the time, you need to reduce and make the decision makers closer to where the projects in the portfolio is, so the decision flow can be fast and follow the track. Look what is happening today. I will talk a little bit later about that, Chat GPT. By December, pretty much none of us heard about it. So I heard on the second week of December, I was in Malaysia, and I saw that. And the first thing I did is, please write a status report to my boss about my current project. I said 3 words, and I pressed, and the report was ready. And it's incredible. And this is changing completely. Many companies today are creating projects to address this. And this is not something we can wait up to the end of the year to take an action, because the time to market is relevant. This is how we bring this agility.
Would you agree, Frank? I mean, is it agility and is it removing these several layers of hierarchy that make systems more efficient? I mean, just in continuation with what Ricardo shared, how do you see the effects of agility and agile transformation on program and portfolio management?
Yeah, it's good. I am actually with Ricardo on this one. So I think the Minister for the Future mentioned this, to be agnostic, a very brave word to say he was agnostic in terms of the systems that you would use. So yes, typically, a portfolio is laid out in kind of a waterfall method. We have phases. We start at the beginning, you come in the pipeline. In my metaphor of the airport, they're in the hangar, they're at the gate, they're on the runway, they're taking off, they're landing. You understand, there's a flow. So agile principles are very helpful. And actually one of those, you know, if you take the backlog and other things, but the sprint. I don't like the word sprint. Personally, at my age, I don't sprint too much anymore, but you get the idea. The idea of sprinting is, for me, more focus. So we've done things recently where we're bringing larger groups, maybe 20, 25 people into a room, and we focus for the whole week. We work only 45 minutes every hour. We only work from 8 to 5, but it's incredible the amount of work you can do in 4 or 5 days when there's no waiting time, when there's no emails, when there's the room, the body language, and the conversations. So very quick decisions. So that idea of sprints being borrowed as a tool, so think of it as a toolkit, I think that's what Ricardo is saying. I think it will help us in portfolio management. But again, that physical building of a portfolio table, and I was saying with John Carlos here, to lay it out, and for senior management, whether they're marketing or legal, they don't have to understand Microsoft Project or Primavera or any of our tools. They understand it's just something I can move on a table. And I can see when the benefit will be realized, because that'll be a gold bar at the end of the table. You know? So it's very physical, very simple. A 5-year-old or a 95-year-old can understand it. We must remove all of the complexity from the process, because there's so much complexity in the product. So just a quick last thing. We need to separate the word efficient and effective. So some of you know I ran a chocolate factory in Russia for a while, and we had to be very efficient. You get to 6 Sigma levels of efficiency. But you can efficiently make something nobody wants to buy. Effective is a different thing, to be able to make it. So we need to bring efficiencies to our processes so that we can be effective with our solutions. Okay, and that's what we're trying to do. Agile is another tool to help us to be more efficient.
Juan Carlos, I'd like to know about your experience at DP World and how agility and agile transformation affected your program and portfolio management.
Well, this is very interesting because we're not influenced by that. We were basically forced by the company transformation into selecting this agile change. We have, I don't know if you guys know, but DP World is effectively transforming from a conventional port operator, now shifting into what is meant to be a seamless end-to-end logistics provider. We're trying to deliver cargo and goods from factory floors to customer doors. What how this has influenced our project management group is that we have an enormous amount of programs now to manage. Because that supply chain, when we started studying as a company, we found many, many gaps. There is transformation gaps, there is infrastructure gaps. And our portfolio just multiplied tremendously. So we had an issue to deal with. We had project managers, people who are, in principle, in our vision, meant to be defining strategies, defining direction, overwhelmed with information documentation. So this forced us into a change, which, the terminology of agility and agile, I know can be very diverse. In our case, was a search for optimization in a better way to do our business and to support our business. So we started with a consultation process we have a community in our company of around 135 project managers. We did a massive consultation process. We listened to each one of them, what issues they are facing, what they forecast is going to be a problem for managing this bigger portfolio. And based on that, we changed, based on our company structure, our process. Now, once we had this process in our hands, it was time to implement it. And then we realized that digitalization was inevitable. So we started looking in the market for tools that will help us to manage our portfolio. I have to say, I was surprised in many occasions where we met people that were trying to drive how we do our business. There were a lot of off-the-shelf solutions that we found in this process. And until we found somebody that was able to come and take our process and make it digital, make it agile, if that's the best word, we didn't stop. Luckily, we found a company that came and took whatever we had already as a process that suits very well our company structure and made this into a proper digital platform to support our portfolio management. The last element of this transformation effectively is being able to manage this data. No? So the concept of data-driven project management came in as a consequence of all of this. Now, how do we see this changing? Before, I think conventionally people used to gather information all the time, but this information was usually stored somewhere and kept for when you need it, when there is a problem, when there is a claim, when there is a delay. You will go to this data, and you will then use it to solve your problem. Today, the mentality is different. We have today the platforms to collect and to process immediately information anywhere in the world. We have a portfolio that is extending around 27 countries. And real time, we have the necessary dashboards to collect the information that we need to make these decisions. So rather than wait, we are now basing our management style on the processing of this data, and we use it on a daily basis to make our decisions.
Working in real time. Frank, I'd like to ask you about the important skill sets that are really required to support the success of portfolio management. And I'm talking about human skill sets. I'm not talking about data.
I think, Ramya, we could learn from you. So two of the big skills you're going to look for: communication skills, presentation skills. A lot of us,
Thank you so much.
You're looking at 3 engineers on the board here, on the table here. So I think portfolio management, program management is where project management was 20 years ago, that it's a craft, we're developing it on the fly, we're learning, there's rules coming in. I remember going back before PMBOK even. So I think the soft skills, learning about them. One of the first things you can do is just practice, make mistakes, come up on stage and stuff like that, and realize the lights and things like that. But the second thing is, I think, reading about it. There are a lot of good books outside of project management that I would ask you to consider. We're learning a lot now about behavioral psychology from Daniel Kahneman's work and others. Nudge, many fabulous books out there. But to ask our young project managers before they move into programs and portfolio to actually read a bit more widely. But yes, I think it's the soft skills. You're absolutely right, is where it is. So simplifying it so that there's no need for complicated software, that will be one of the things. But also not being afraid of team development, conflict, motivation, those kind of things are important, yeah.
Actually, the argument could be made that the software simplifies things and doesn't make things more complex, but I'll ask Ricardo if he agrees with you. Is it soft skills that are the most important skill set in order to support the success of a program?
Yeah, I am quite suspicious because the next talk I will deliver is exactly about that here. It's about the power skills. And probably 90% of all the challenges my clients face, I face, are human-related challenges. Most of the time, you see signals. Okay, there is a budget problem here. There is a supply problem here. But then if you go a little bit deeper, you will see that this is all related to human behavior, related to aspects like motivation, lack of communication. And if you ask me today, what would be the really key soft skills without even saying the communication and these other aspects, I would say the first one is our ability to adapt to different circumstances, to an ever-changing environment. And adaptation is not easy at all because we were all raised looking for stability, and adaptability is the ability to work in places where there is no stability. The second is about system thinking and system and complex thinking, understanding that one thing here can implicate other things there. And if you have a simplistic way, you may take a decision here that will hurt you 2 years down the road. And this is, for example, what Michelle Walker called the gray rhino in her book. She said that most of the troubles that companies face, and I published this in my podcast yesterday, they are very obvious. They are like a gray rhino coming in towards you, but you are just unable to take action. For example, we are talking about AI, we are talking about metaverse, we are talking about climate change, and none of them are facts that just happened yesterday. No, we are talking about this for quite a while. So why people are so surprised when people see ChatGPT? It's because we tend to neglect the obvious. And last but not least is commitment, because projects, portfolios, they are not easy. They are not easy. They involve risks. They involve a new construction of a new future state. It involves technology, people, and it's not easy. So people need to have the commitment with the goal, because without that, you do not move people to go above and beyond to deliver the project. So these are the three soft skills I would.
Adaptability, commitment, and don't ignore the obvious.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Juan Carlos, DP World has operations throughout the world. If you planned for an expansion of your portfolio, your management core team, what would be the most important skill sets that you would insist on for new members of your team?
Okay, there's a long list. How much time we have? No. I think in the way we are approaching the skills and the people that we hire to support our portfolio management, first, I would like to make a distinction. Something that we learned and we ended up implementing is we thought it was all about the project manager and his structure and managing activities. And when these projects became programs and then later on became portfolios, we realized that we need to diversify our site teams to be able to face with this reality. So we mainly equipped our sites, our projects with specific project management capabilities. So the whole concept is, how do we free the time for our senior implementation team to think, to communicate, to deal with stakeholders? Because if we fill them up with data gathering activities and more project management detailed functions, they will not have this time. And we hire these people for their experience. We hire these people because of their brain power, brain emotion. I think something our chairman earlier used today. We constantly rely on people's brain to achieve our objective. Now, this diversification now allowed us to hire these project management skills. We have now a completely new community in our department that only deals with exchange of data and how to improve our project management skills. These people, what we will look for, what we think is required in terms of skills. Certainly, we need people who are tech savvy, people that are not afraid to interact with softwares, with technology, with innovation. People need to be open-minded. It can be of any age. It's just an approach where people tend to enclose themselves in what's conventional. And this is not what we want. We need to learn, we need to grow, we need to expose ourselves to new technology. So we need people who are technically savvy, we need people who are able to understand the importance of data-driven decisions. We will spend a lot of money and time collecting this data, processing this data. But if our team doesn't use it, then I think we have wasted all this energy. So we need people to be aware of this powerful tool which we are collecting here, which is the data we have now. And finally, something that is a world trend, certainly one of the most important items in our company this year is sustainability. We need people to be aware and to believe that this is important, that we cannot just go and do things and disregard the environments and the societies where we work. They need to be sustainable, they need to be aware of the environment, and they need to make sure that our projects don't bring any harm, but on the contrary, they bring resilience to these communities.
So they need to be tech savvy, they need to be analytical when it comes to data, and they need to respect the environment ultimately. Frank, I'd like to ask you about future changes in portfolio management specifically for the coming 5 years.
For the coming 5 years, okay. Without using ChatGPT, okay, without mentioning ChatGPT. If I could turn it slightly another way, coming out of COVID and being able to be in person with you again and even meeting these two here today, I think that ability to learn from each other, to listen to each other and to recognize the experiences that we've had, and then we might have a young, shout out to young Danny from DP World who works with you, who was in my class. How do we make a world for them the next 5 years and beyond that they, you know, having 3 engineers all male is not a diverse selection you have here. I would like to see that changing in the future. But what I'm more concerned about is the health and fostering well-being. So if you think of fostering well-being as the mental, the physical and the spiritual as well. Likewise on the project, if we have a project program portfolio person, we want to make sure that not only do they feel comfortable with the product, with being effective and having that kind of knowledge, but also the process and being efficient. And that can start to cause you stress, right? And then we add in the third level, which is the people side, the power skills we're calling now. We change the names with the soft skills. So that idea that a young person has to know about the technical side and has to manage the process side and be efficient, and then have this element of bringing the people together, essence you might want to call it, so effective, efficient, and essence. It's a lot of stress on one person, particularly when they're young and they're settling down and getting kids and stuff like that. So I do worry about our progression, our ability to help people to sustain this project management, whether you call it project, program, or portfolio, that I like to see that in 5 and 10 years' time, that we see a good path, that they don't have gray hair like me, and learn from mistakes. So it's good to make it stay. When you have a project like Mars, it's relatively easy to be motivated towards that, but not every project is a Mars project, and so how do we help those people in their jobs? So
technology and the work that it enables us to do has actually increased pressure on the individual.
So manage the stress, to help us to manage the stress for the younger people, yeah.
Yes. Ricardo, how do you see future changes in program management? So we just heard from Frank regarding portfolio management. Ricardo, if you would please address program management also in the coming 5 years.
Yes. Of course, for me, when you first said 5 years, you know, it seems close, but it's very far because things are happening in such a high pace that it's very hard to predict. But what I will add is, like you, it's technology. So tools that we see today that seems very far from us will become very close. So you will have, for example, AI living close to your work as a program manager, helping you to address the benefit, review the benefits. For example, tools like AHP, Analytical Hierarchy Process, done by software, helping you to understand and prioritize initiatives and efforts at a lightning speed. So all the use of technology, I would say, crushing the traditional time for you to make decisions on program management. I see this. And also I see a massive volatility in the environment. I think that, you know, we saw COVID. We are seeing now chat GPT. We saw blockchain recently. So all of this is changing at such a dynamic pace that really we need to be mindful that probably our next colleague in our program management office will be ChatGPT. And why I'm saying this, because I don't know if you saw the news, yesterday ChatGPT was approved at the MBA at University of Pennsylvania. 100% ChatGPT answers. 100. No single tailoring from any human. And this became a case for yesterday, published yesterday. So just to give you an idea, so why not managing programs too?
Waiting to see the impact on Microsoft stock at 6:30 Dubai time. Let's see what happens. We have run out of time, but I can't leave one, Carlos, but without asking you also, I mean, how you see the future changes in program and portfolio management for the coming 5 years, in addition to what Ricardo and Frank have already said.
Yeah, I think very much aligned in the concept. I think technology and innovation is going to be the main change as we see portfolio management developing in the future. There are so many technologies that I would expect are going to make our life easier. They will make our decision-making process more precise and more agile as well. These technologies are not far away. Some of them are already here. We're already facing, trying to find solutions for AI, for our digital cameras, to identify security when people are trespassing. We can see this in a camera, and the camera can alert the management that there is something wrong. We see it in our operations. We have drone deployment at portfolio level where we can deploy units and they on a daily basis take footage of all of our projects and identify what has changed, what volumes have been increased. I mean, there's so much out there. And personally, I think it's at the tip of our fingers. It's just people need to change their mentality. But with the use of this technology, we will be much more effective in what we do, much more precise, as I said. And certainly, the more we get into it, we will get used to it. And I would expect this will be a exponential growth in how we integrate technology in our portfolio management.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our panelists for your wonderful insights. It was such a pleasure to chat with you. And thank you to our very attentive audience for being with us today. Thank you.